And the author says, may Allah have mercy upon him. Chapter: the congregational prayer is an emphasized recommendation. Sunnatun mu'akkadah. Sunnah mu'akkadah. That's what the author said. May Allah have mercy upon him. But the strong saying in the Shafi'i school is that congregational prayer is fard kifaya, not sunnah mu'akkadah. Fard kifaya, communal obligation on the men, not the women. As for the woman, it's more rewardable for her to pray at home than to pray at the masjid. And for the man, it's more rewardable for him to pray his obligatory prayer at the masjid, not at home. It's more rewardable for the man to pray his sunnah prayers at home and his obligatory prayers in the masjid. He'll pray his sunnah prayers at home for the sake of his sincerity. And he would pray his obligatory prayers in the masjid for displaying the signs of Islam. So the congregational prayer, which is a minimum of two, an imam and a follower. The right judgment in Shafi'i school is that it's communal obligation. And the way to fulfill that communal obligation is for there to be a congregational prayer wherever there are Muslims. Yani every distance. So for example, within a town, there would be at every distance within the town, like if the town is New York or Philadelphia, for example, or some town like that, it's not enough just to have one congregational prayer in the entire city. Rather, you would hold a congregational prayer somewhere where there are Muslims. And then whoever wants to come to the congregational prayer can come there. That's a condition for recognizing or for fulfilling the communal obligation. That whoever wants to come knows that he can come there and pray there. So it's not enough to be in your house. Unless your house is a known musalla, a known place for prayer, whoever wants to go there can go there and pray there. And then some distance away from that one, there should be another one so that it's easy for the Muslims in that area to pray, because it's not easy for those Muslims to get to that first area to pray, and so on. Let me know if you have any question there. It is on the ma'mum, yani it's the ma'mum, the follower's duty to intend to follow. Because if he follows the imam's moves without an intention to follow the imam, his prayer is invalid. So it's the follower's duty to intend to follow the imam. You need to make that intention before you follow him in his moves. It's not a condition to make the intention to follow the imam when you say Allahu Akbar. Unless it's a prayer that can only be prayed in congregation. Some prayers can only be prayed in congregation. They can only be initiated as congregational prayers, like Friday prayer. So then, in that case, the follower must make the intention to follow while saying Allahu Akbar. If it's a prayer that could validly be initiated as a solo prayer, then it's not a condition for the validity of this prayer for someone to intend to be a follower. In other words, had there been an imam leading a prayer, and then someone stood behind him for one of the 5 prayers, not Jumu'ah, and he said, this follower, Allahu Akbar, with the intention to pray whatever prayer is in, but without an intention to follow the imam. Even though, let's say, he's actually standing in the line, but he said Allahu Akbar without the intention to follow the Imam, then what's the judgment of his prayer? It's initiated. Now, before he follows the Imam in his moves, he needs to make the intention to follow the Imam. If he makes ruku', for example, without the intention to follow the Imam, yani he does that with the Imam without the intention to do so, then this will invalidate his prayer. So it is the duty of the follower to intend to follow, not the duty of the Imam to intend to lead. So if someone is praying a prayer and then yani, he initiated his prayer as a solo prayer, okay, that's valid, as long as, again, it's not a prayer that has to be done in congregation, like Jumu'ah. In the case of Jumu'ah, the Imam must make the intention to be the Imam when he says Allahu Akbar, or else the prayer is not valid. But another prayer that doesn't have to be in congregation, a prayer that congregation is not a condition for its validity, had someone merely said Allahu Akbar with the intention to initiate one of those prayers, then his prayer is initiated. Then if someone came behind him to follow him, it does not become obligatory on him to intend to be the Imam. His prayer is initiated. He's praying. The one who's following him, he's getting the reward for congregation when he intended to follow the Imam. And the one who's being followed is not getting the reward of a congregation if he does not intend to be the Imam. It is permissible for the free to follow the slave and for the pubescent to follow the child. For a man to follow a woman is not valid, or a hermaphrodite, and for a hermaphrodite to follow a woman is not valid also, because that hermaphrodite might be a man. So a woman can follow in prayer a man or a hermaphrodite, and the man can only follow a man, and a hermaphrodite can follow a man. Yes, it is valid for the pubescent to follow a child. A woman can follow a woman, a boy or a girl, yani a woman, a pubescent woman can follow a girl in prayer, a non-pubescent girl. So a man can follow a man, and a woman can follow a man or a woman, or a hermaphrodite, and a hermaphrodite can follow a man. The case is clear, sister? Nor is it valid for a reciter to follow one who cannot recite. Reciter means someone who knows how to recite validly. A reciter cannot follow someone who cannot recite properly, validly. We'll come back to see some details there, insha'Allah ta'ala. Bi'ithnillah. Whenever the Imam prays in the masjid, not the musalla, the masjid, if one is knowledgeable about the Imam's prayer, meaning he knows where the Imam is in his prayer, he knows the Imam's position. Is he standing? Is he bowing? Is he prostrating? Is he sitting? Then it is sufficient to follow that Imam as long as he does not precede the Imam. It's haram for him to go ahead of the Imam. It's invalid to stand in front of the Imam. For your heels to be in front of the Imam's heels is invalid. We're talking Shafi'i school here. And in the sitting position, it's invalid for your buttocks to be ahead of the Imam's buttocks. And it's invalid for you to start your takbir before the Imam finishes his takbir. And it's haram, not invalid, haram, major sin, to bow before the Imam or to prostrate before the Imam. Now, there's some details there about going ahead of the Imam, 2 moves or 3 moves, if they're long or if they're short. I'm just going to stick to the text for now. And inshallah, When we come back with more details, we can fill in more details. If the imam prayed in the masjid and the ma'moom, the follower, were outside the masjid, close to it means within 300 cubits of the masjid, and also the follower is knowledgeable about the imam's prayer with the same meaning. He knows the imam's position in the prayer, and there were no barrier there, like the door of the masjid is open. There's no barrier. It's not closed. Then it is permissible, yani it's valid. So if you're inside the masjid with the imam, not musalla, masjid, then it's valid to follow the imam at any distance. Valid. But it's disliked to be more than 3 cubits away from the imam. And if there's a line or lines between you and the imam, it's disliked to be more than 3 cubits from the last line. Disliked. Now, if the imam is inside the masjid and you're outside the masjid, and the door is not closed and there's no other barrier there, then as long as you're within 300 cubits of the masjid, your prayer is valid. And if you're outside of the masjid completely, you and the imam, everyone is outside the masjid, then you need to be within 300 cubits of the imam or within 300 cubits of the last line. When you pray in congregation, the line ahead of you becomes like the imam. So what are the limits of the masjid in the case of the one who is praying outside? Yani, if the imam is inside the masjid and the follower is outside the masjid, then the follower has to be not more than 300 cubits from the masjid. Is that clear? This chapter of congregational prayer in Abu Shuja lacks a lot of details. Our Sheikh's chapter in the summary of obligatory knowledge has many more details in the congregational prayer. So review that. He said, so in the masjids where the women are on a higher level than the men, is that fine? Yes, you can follow the imam anywhere in the masjid as long as there's not, even in the case of the barrier, let me review that. We'll double check if there's a detail about the barrier, but inside the masjid, if the imam is in the masjid and the follower is in the masjid, without the follower being in front of the imam, you can follow the imam anywhere without being in front of him. As long as there's not a barrier. Let's say here, you said sometimes the women are usually in a room without seeing the imam. Okay, so if it's in the masjid, it doesn't matter, but we'll check about the barrier issue. If it's outside the masjid, then they don't have to see the imam. They just have to know his position in the prayer and not have a barrier between them. But seeing him is not a condition. Chapter. It is permissible for the traveler to shorten the fourfold prayer, that means 4 rak'ah prayer, with 5 conditions, yani under 5 conditions. That his travel would not be sinful. So it has to be a permissible travel. Permissible covers all the judgments except haram. How many judgments are there? Who'll tell us how many judgments are there? When I say permissible covers all the judgments except haram. So how many judgments are there?
6.
5.
6.
5 judgments.
What? Oh,
Yes, obligatory, haram, sunnah, oh, yani recommended. So obligatory, 1. Forbidden, 2. Recommended, 3. Disliked, 4. And permissible, 5.
about mubah.
That's permissible. Mubah is permissible. That's the 5th one. Those judgments are called al-ahkam wal-khamsah, the 5 judgments. So usually when you say, what's the judgment? It means one of these. It's possible to add 2 more judgments according to some scholars, valid or invalid. But really those go back to the first 5. So it's permissible for the traveler to shorten the fourfold prayer under 5 conditions. One is that his travel would not be haram, not haram. So that leaves 4 more judgments. So it could be obligatory, like Hajj, or recommended, like uh, visiting a relative, or uh, could be disliked. Now, I don't have an example of disliked travel, but it's not haram though. Or permissible, like you just want to go sightseeing, but not haram. That its distance would be 16 farsakhs. So this is a often asked question. How long does the travel have to be, or how far does it have to be? And what's the distance that permits shortening and combining prayers? There is not a consensus about that. There's not a consensus about that. The famous saying in the Shafi'i school is a 2-day walking distance. 2-day walking distance. When we say 2 days, that means 2 daytimes, not the day and the night nonstop. No, or 2 night times without counting the daytime. A 2-day walking distance is how far you could walk in 2 daytimes, not including the night, or 2 night times, not including the day. And also minus from that, subtract from that prayer time and eating and bathroom and resting. That's about 80 miles. But then we still need to check what that mile means there. That's the famous saying in Shafi'i school, 2-day walking distance. The least of sayings, the shortest of all the sayings is approximately 27 miles. I mean American miles. 27, what equals approximately 27 American miles. So if you want to go 28 miles, 29 miles, make sure, then according to that, that's long enough. And the distance begins from the point of being outside of the town. Being outside of the town. What's the town? The town is the building cluster, the cluster of buildings. Meaning, I mean by that, not the political borders of a town. You could be, according to political borders, in a town and then just cross the street and be in the other town. So we're not talking about that. Rather, according to what I'm saying to you, you could be in a town and then cross the street and be in another town, but the buildings never stopped. So it's as if it's the same town. And then you keep going, and then you might cross into even a third town, but the buildings never stopped. So according to this, you're still in the town. You never got out yet. Once you reach the point where the buildings stop, that's when you're outside of the town. So that's when your distance starts. So if your destination is that many miles, the necessary amount of miles from where the buildings stop, then you can shorten and combine your prayers from the time you get outside of the buildings. No, not forbidden to pray full length when traveling. Not forbidden. Here, look at how we worded this. It is permissible. We didn't say obligatory, permissible. It's not obligatory for the traveler to shorten his prayers. It is permissible for the traveler to shorten the fourfold prayers under 5 conditions. 1, that his travel would not be sinful. 2, that its distance would be 16 farsakhs. So here also, sometimes a person would say, what's a traveling distance? How far is a traveling distance? Or someone would say, is such and such town a traveling distance from such and such town? So if you want to say it the way the scholars say it, don't say traveling distance, say shortening distance. It's called by the scholars masafatul qasr, masafa al-qasr, masafatul qasr, the distance of shortening, a shortening distance. So then let your question be, is such and such town a shortening distance from such and such town? This travel or journey that allows shortening and combining is called a long travel. Safarun tawil, a long travel or a long journey or a journey. I think journey means a long travel anyway. I think journey by itself means a long travel. Has to be a journey, a long travel. There's also something called safarun qasir, a short travel. So that's where you're going to a town that's close to your town. It's outside of your town, but it's close. It's not far enough for shortening and combining, yet it is a travel. Or one might say it's a journey. It is a journey, but it's not long enough to shorten and combine.
Hey, I have a question.
Yes.
So from Philadelphia to Yaten is not long enough to shorten your prayer.
No.
Okay, gotcha.
Or to Chester. And maybe, I don't know about Wilmington, maybe not even Wilmington.
That's 35 miles. American mile.
Okay, but from where the buildings stop, though. You have to consider Philadelphia with its connected suburbs. All of that is one town.
Oh, so would Chester be a connecting suburb?
I am not sure. I think Chester is disconnected, but I could be mistaken about that.
Okay, that's good.
It's definitely not far, though.
Okay,
I mean, Wafi. You said from Philly to Yaden, don't the buildings stop? I could be mistaken about that, but I think they're connected.
Doesn't.
I remember riding my bike to Yaden, so as a teenager. Said it doesn't stop, doesn't break.
It doesn't break.
Yeah. Is it disliked to refrain from shortening when it is permissible to do so? I haven't heard.
So, Sheikh, one more thing. So you have to be at least the distance of Baltimore from Philadelphia?
Baltimore, I'm pretty confident that's far.
Okay. That's 92 miles.
Philadelphia. Huh?
I said that's 92 miles, depending on what part.
That takes several hours to get there, doesn't it? Or how long?
Yeah, about an hour and a half. Yes.
Yeah, that's long. That's far.
All right. Gotcha.
You're welcome. Okay. Also, 3, that he would be performing a current fourfold prayer, a current prayer, yani, not a prayer that he missed as a resident. He can't say, I'm a traveler now. Let me start making up these prayers that I had missed. I've been missed them already. And I'll just pray them 2 rak'ahs since I'm a traveler. That's not valid. It has to be a current prayer. That means it has to be a prayer that came in while he was a traveler, even if he missed it. If you missed your prayer as a traveler, I mean, in a sinful way, you missed that prayer. You got your major sin, but you're still a traveler. You can still pray that prayer shortened. Ameen wa fikum. And 4, that he intends to shorten during the ihram. While you're saying Allahu Akbar, you have to have the intention to shorten that Dhuhr or Asr or Isha prayer to 2 rak'ahs while you're making the takbir. If you forget the intention to shorten while making the takbir, then you missed it. And if you interrupt your prayer to restart with the intention, that's a major sin, although it would be valid if you did it. You can't do that. That's haram. But if you did do that, it would be valid. So what I'm saying is, a person was a traveler, and then out of habit, he just intended to pray Dhuhr, for example, and he forgot to intend to shorten it. Then in the middle of his prayer, he said, oh, snap, I wanted to shorten my prayer. I forgot to intend. So he just interrupts his prayer. That's haram, major sin right there. And then he starts over, Allahu Akbar, with the intention to shorten. That's valid. It was haram for him to do that. Major sin. And 5, that he would not follow a resident. Yani, the one who's shortening his prayer, the traveler who's shortening his prayer, cannot follow a resident who's praying at full length. It's not valid. But the reverse of that, or the vice versa of that, is valid. The resident who's praying his prayer at full length is allowed to follow a traveler who's shortening. So what is the intention in this scenario? He just intends to follow the imam, and uh, and then when the imam ends his prayer after 2 rak'ahs, that resident, he just stands up and completes his prayer, 2 more rak'ahs. He doesn't need a special intention. Oh, you said, what does one intend when they plan to shorten? Just that he intends to shorten. Yani, this question here, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said what helps you a lot. He said, وَلِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى. Everyone has whatever he intended. What does that mean? It means you intend to do exactly what it is you want to do. So based on that, what would he intend? He would say in his intention, I now pray such and such prayer 2 rak'ahs, because that's what he wants. That's what he wants, so that's what he intends. وَلِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى. For combining, we didn't get there yet. We're just talking about shortening at the moment. Does the one shortening his prayer have to leave to his destination by a certain time? He has to be a traveler. He has to be a traveler in the first place. So if he's not a traveler, then it's not valid. Can it be done daily? He has to be a traveler, as long as he's a traveler. So what if you decided to walk from Maine to California? You want to walk from Maine to California. You got your backpack and a bottle of water and a stick. You're going to walk from Maine to California. So how long do you think that'll take? That might take you a year, maybe. maybe more, or maybe less. I don't know. So you're a traveler. So as long as you're a traveler, then you can shorten and combine your prayers. Shorten the prayer for a daily traveler. A daily traveler. He has to be a traveler. You said, so if he started traveling at Dhuhr time, could he shorten Dhuhr? If he's a traveler, then he has the permissions of a traveler. Can you also discuss how to shorten the prayer? Yes, you're just going to pray 4 rak'ahs is 2 rak'ahs. That's it. It's that easy. And then you say your salam and you're done. That's clear? You're welcome. So even if he was still in his town when Dhuhr first came in, he's not a traveler if he's in his own town. He has to be out of the town to be a traveler. He has to be a traveler. Yes, don't make it hard, Yanni. Don't make it hard. It's just as easy as I'm telling you. If you're a traveler, then you have the permissions of a traveler. So yes, even if he was in the town, he was not a traveler when Dhuhr came in. He became a traveler, and he didn't pray yet. And he became a traveler, and Dhuhr's still in. And now he wants to pray Dhuhr. He can pray 2 rak'ahs. Yes. He said, is it 2 rak'ahs each time? What if it's Maghrib time? Only, okay. Yes, only 4 rak'ah prayer. That's what the author says here. It is permissible for the traveler to shorten the 4-fold prayer. So what's excluded? Maghrib and Fajr. 4-fold prayer means what? Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha. Ameen wa iyyakum. So let me give you a few more details related to one of the questions that came here. How long can you even be a traveler? As long as it takes you to get to your destination. But what if you reach your destination? Do you stop being a traveler? If you're going to stay at your destination for 3 days or less, not including entry and exit days, then you're still a traveler at your destination. If you're going to stay at your destination for 4 days or more, then you stop being a traveler as soon as you reach the point where what? Where the buildings start. As soon as you reach the point where the buildings start. So let's say your destination is Los Angeles, California. Okay, that's a big city there. And they have suburbs too. So you're going to be a traveler until you get to Los Angeles itself? No, same example. Once you reach the point where the buildings start. So what if the buildings start before you get to Los Angeles itself, and there's towns connected to Los Angeles? So just like we said, you're not a traveler till you reach the point where the buildings stop. Same thing, you reach your destination when you reach the point where the buildings start. Let me know if that's not clear. So, I'll repeat the question and the answer. Is a person a traveler at his destination? The answer is, if he's going to stay at his destination for 3 complete days or less, the word complete is important there. For 3 complete days or less, then he does retain the permissions of a traveler. And if he's going to stay at his destination for 4 days or more, then he loses the permissions of a traveler from the moment he reaches the point where the buildings start. Soon as he gets into the buildings, the construction, the buildings could be made out of bricks, they could be made out of sticks. Then he stopped being a traveler. What does 3 complete days mean, not including entry and exit days? 3 complete days, not including entry and exit days, is as if you have 5 days. As if. So entry day starts at Fajr. Or sorry, not entry day. First day starts at Fajr. First complete day starts at Fajr. So it doesn't matter when you get in. That's your entry day. When did you get in? You got in at Dhuhr time. You got in at Isha time. That's your entry day. That doesn't count. The first Fajr that comes in from the time you got to your destination, that's your first day at Fajr. That starts your first day. Then you have 3 complete days. So let's say you reached your destination on Monday. That's your entry day. Then at Fajr on Tuesday, that's your first day. So you have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Those are 3 complete days. And then you're going to leave on Friday before Maghrib, before the sun goes down. That's your exit day. It doesn't count. So it's like you have 5 days. You get 3 complete days. Those 3 complete days do not include the entry and exit days. So it's like you have 5 days, but they're not 5 complete days. 3 complete days and 2 partial days. Entry day and exit day. Entry day, yani before Fajr. Whatever is before Fajr, when you got to your destination, that's entry day. And exit day is before Maghrib, after your 3 complete days. So if you're going to stay at your destination for 3 complete days or less, then you retain your traveler status with its permissions. Shortening and combining, wiping your khufs for 3 days, not having to fast, being allowed to skip Jumu'ah if you're a man. If you're going to stay at your destination for 4 days or more, then as soon as you get into the buildings, your permissions of a traveler are gone. Let me know if that's not clear, please. Now, the author says, it is permissible for the traveler to combine Dhuhr prayer and Asr prayer in the time of whichever of them he wants. So, you know, Dhuhr, that's the earlier one. Asr is the later one. So you could pray Dhuhr at Asr time. Yani, you could delay Dhuhr until Asr time, or you could forward Asr to Dhuhr time. How would you intend? If you want to delay Dhuhr until Asr time, then you have to wait for Dhuhr time to come in. Because when the sun declines out of its zenith into the west. Dhuhr came in. Once Dhuhr comes in, then you can intend, anytime during Dhuhr time, you can intend to delay Dhuhr until Asr time. But if you forget to intend and you pray Dhuhr at Asr time without intending to delay, that's a major sin. You prayed late without an excuse. So you can delay Dhuhr until Asr. You have to wait for the Dhuhr time to come in and then intend to delay Dhuhr to pray it at Asr time. Anytime during Dhuhr time, you can make that intention. If you let Dhuhr go out without intending to delay it, then you committed a major sin of praying late without an excuse. If you want to forward Asr to the Dhuhr time, then you need to start your Dhuhr prayer. And while you're praying Dhuhr, anytime inside of your Dhuhr prayer, you can intend to forward the Asr to the Dhuhr time. Now, whenever you pray the later prayer in the early time, then you must pray right after the first prayer. So if you want to pray Asr at Dhuhr time, you must pray Asr immediately after you pray Dhuhr. But when you delay the early prayer to the later time, it's not obligatory to pray them immediately after the other. The reason for combining the prayer is that you're a traveler.
Right?
Yes?
How about making the intention for the one you are forwarding? When to make
So
that?
if you want to pray the later prayer early, then anytime inside of the first prayer, the early prayer, while you're praying the early prayer, Dhuhr in our example here, while you're inside of your Dhuhr prayer, anytime inside of the Dhuhr prayer, you make the intention to forward Asr. And then you say the salam and you stand up and you pray Asr immediately after Dhuhr. Ameen wa fikum.
Others to know.
Sheikh Ra'id,
Yes.
so in the other scenario where you delay, for example, Dhuhr to the Asr time, you said that the rule isn't that you have to pray them like one after the other. You're saying something like that?
Correct. That's correct.
So how does that scenario work then?
Like,
Give me an example.
for example, you correctly delayed, you validly delayed Dhuhr until Asr time. Asr came in, and then you prayed Dhuhr, and then you went to the movies. And then you came out of the movies, and then you prayed Asr before Maghrib came in. That's valid. It's not haram.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yani, but you got into the movies in a valid way. You said if you delay Dhuhr to Asr time, do you still have to keep the order? Let me double check that.
Jake, I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's combining prayer. That's not shortening prayers, right?
Yeah, we're on combining now.
Okay. All right. Got you.
You're welcome. And then the author said, and it's permissible to combine Maghrib prayer and Isha prayer in the time of whichever of them he wants. Same rules. All what we said, it applies here too. So if you want to delay Maghrib until Isha time, you have to wait for the sun to go down and then make the intention inside of Maghrib time, anytime during the Maghrib time, to delay your Maghrib until Isha. If you don't make that intention and you pray Maghrib out of its time, then you've committed a major sin. And if you want to forward the Isha prayer to the Maghrib time, then you need to start your Maghrib prayer, and any time inside of your Maghrib prayer, you make the intention to forward the Isha prayer to the Maghrib time. And then you pray your Maghrib, and then immediately after Maghrib, pray Isha. You said the fourfold prayers can be combined and shortened, correct? The fourfold prayers can be shortened. The Dhuhr and Asr prayers can be combined, and the Maghrib and Isha prayers can be combined. That's clear?
Sheikh, right?
Yes?
If you delay Asr, Zuhr to Asr, you have to pray first Zuhr.
I need to double check that.
Okay.
Someone just asked that question. And then the author said, it is permissible for the resident in the rain to combine them, the same ones, yani Dhuhr and Asr, or Maghrib and Isha, but only in the time of the first one of the two. Meaning, in the case of rain, you can only forward the later prayer to the earlier time. You cannot delay the early prayer to the later time. In the case of rain, under its conditions. Those conditions include being in a place of congregational prayer, and that the rain is a heavy rain that soaks the clothing, and that the prayer is in congregation, not a solo prayer. We'll see any other details we have, inshallah, when we come back over this by the permission of Allah. Then what do you do? And there's no shortening here. This is only combining for the rain. In congregation, you start your Dhuhr prayer with the intention to bring the Asr prayer forward while it's raining. The heavy rain is coming down. You make the intention for Dhuhr with the intention to forward the Asr. Yeah, all of this is Shafi'i school. And then you say the Salam for Dhuhr prayer. And if it's still raining, not if it stopped raining, if it's still raining when you say the Salam for your Dhuhr prayer, you stand up and you say the Takbir for the Asr prayer. If it's still raining, when you say the Takbir of the Asr prayer, and then you pray Asr. 4 rak'ahs of Dhuhr, 4 rak'ahs of Asr. That's valid even if it stops raining before you finish your Asr prayer. So then there's combining for rain, and there's combining for travel. And the scholars differed about whether it's permissible to combine for sickness. Abu Shuja' didn't mention sickness, so we're not going to mention it. We're going to leave it where the author left it. Question: having cars and buildings now, would this combining for rain still be permissible in the city? They had buildings then. The cars don't matter. If they had buildings then. Yani, unless there's something in your question I didn't understand. Are you asking, Yani, did you find a difference between the buildings now and the buildings then? Because people won't get wet traveling to the masjids. So there are still some more details in there, inshallah ta'ala. We'll see them. There's still some more details. But they had buildings then, so that part's the same. The cars, yeah, and we'll see when we add some more details. I need to review anyway, so I'm going to refrain from answering that. Yeah, buildings, Yani, there's no difference between Yani buildings. That's why I said earlier, even if those were made out of twigs, buildings might be made of bricks. They might be made of twigs. They don't have to be skyscrapers. When we say building, doesn't mean it's a skyscraper. That's not a condition. It's clear? Tayyib, and that's all we're going to cover for today. We'll save the chapter for Friday prayer for next week, if Allah enables us. Do you have any other question I can answer for you?
Sheikh?
Yes.
Is it possible, from one standpoint, the Jama'ah prayer can be Fard Kifaya, and then from one standpoint, it can be Sunnah Mu'akkada? Or is it just one ruling?
Those are two different judgments. If it's fard, means it's not enough to say it's sunnah. If it's sunnah, means it's not obligatory.
Okay. Okay. All right, then. I was thinking maybe for the individual Sunnah Mu'akkada and then for the community, but I guess, yeah, all right.
It is a communal obligation. So when the person prays the Jama'ah prayer with the conditions fulfilled, let him make the intention of fulfilling a communal obligation so that he would have that reward of an obligation. You said Dhuhr and Asr can be shortened and combined. Yes, correct. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Mo, I'm asking. Here, so it is permissible for the traveler to shorten the fourfold prayer. So there's right there. It is permissible for the traveler to combine Dhuhr prayer and Asr prayer. Question: does the route of travel matter? If you take the highway versus the street, does this have any impact on what point the buildings stop? Well, you're not going to be a traveler until you get out of the buildings. So I'm not really sure what's the angle of your question. You won't be a traveler as long as you're still inside the buildings. Whichever way you go, if you're inside the buildings, you're not a traveler. So with that fact, I don't understand the angle of the question.
Sheikh Ra'id,
Yes.
when we when we're praying in congregation in the masjid, for example, and it's raining, we pray in Dhuhr, and then it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
We finish and it's still raining. I wasn't sure if you said we just immediately stand up and pray. Also, do we need to make the adhan or the Iqamah?
No.
Okay.
No, you're going to pray it immediately, and you need to have had the intention to advance the Asr prayer while you pray Dhuhr. If it's in the takbir, let me review that.
Okay.
Maybe we'll see that when we come back over it, inshallah.
Barakallahu feek.
Ameen wa feekum.
Sheikh, I have a question.
Yes.
If one don't want to combine or shorten his prayers, he just outright just while he's traveling, he or she traveling, just doing the prayers the way they're supposed to be done. Is there any harm on that?
Can you repeat your question?
Someone traveling don't want to shorten their prayers or don't want to combine their prayers.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to do the prayers the way it is.
Okay.
Is there any harm?
That's not haram.
No, I'm not saying not harm. I'm saying harm. Ain't no harm in that.
I don't understand what's the difference.
I mean, man, sure. Is it dislike anything like that? Like,
I don't know if it's disliked.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. You said the highway sometimes isn't connected or is surrounded by buildings. If one gets on the highway, can they say they're a traveler? Are they inside the buildings or outside the buildings? For your question here, are they inside the buildings or outside the buildings? I'll wait for you to answer that. It says, does the second prayer advanced due to rain have to also be prayed in congregation? Yes. This one, Sister Muslima. This question about the highway. Is the person inside the buildings or outside the buildings? You said, that's what I'm trying to figure out. If there's a highway but not surrounded by buildings, do they say they're traveling at the point they get on? So is the question about the highway or the question is about the buildings, Yani? The judgment is linked to being inside the buildings or outside the buildings, whether you're on a highway or you're on a dirt road or a cobble road or an airplane or helicopter. So it's not the road. The judgment is not linked to the road. The judgment is linked to the buildings. So if you're inside the buildings, you're not a traveler yet. Once you get out of the buildings, then you'll be a traveler. Or there's no road at all, and you're just walking through the grass and there's no road there. The judgment is not linked to the road or the ground. It's the town, which is the cluster of buildings. Is that clear? So how can you be in the buildings and highway? There might be a highway. I live right here. There's a highway right here outside of my door. That's why when I open my windows, you're going to hear all those cars. Inshallah. Question, for a woman that's considering herself a traveler, does she need a mahram? Well, a woman can't travel without a mahram. Unless she has an excuse. Or else, if her travel is haram, then we already said here that his travel would not be sinful. That's a condition, that the travel is not sinful. How are you, Sister Muslima? Okay. So even for me, your question's not clear because it's like you're asking me if the road to get out of the town has anything to do with the issue. So just take the road out of it. If the person is still in the town, so for example, if you live in a city, then you're surrounded by buildings. And then you want to travel. So let's say there is a road and you want to travel. So you get in your car and you start driving down the road. and you're still in the buildings. And you pass street after street after street, and you're still in the buildings. And you keep going in one direction, and you're going and going, and there's still buildings. And then you pass through one township, through another township, there's still buildings, so you're still in the town. And then eventually you're going to find yourself that there's no buildings anymore. So now you're out of the town. So if you're going to go a shortening distance from that point, then you're a traveler as soon as you got out of the town. Is it clear? You said, depending on the route of travel, you may cross a bridge and be considered in another town. But if you take a different route, you may pass many houses. Okay. So let's say, for example, I want to go to California. If I'm in Philadelphia and I want to go to California, and so I start driving north. California is to the west, though. So if I start driving north, then I'm going to go pass through whatever buildings are there until eventually I get out of the town. Once I'm out of the town, then I'm a traveler. Or I might go west. So I'm going to go west until eventually I'm out of the town. Once I'm out of the town, then I'm a traveler. Or I might go east. So I'm going to have to cross the Delaware River into Jersey, but I want to go to California, which means I got to do a U-turn. So once I get out of the town, with the issue of the bridge and the river and stuff, that has some details there. But let's just say I'm out of the town, then I'm a traveler, but I'm going to have to make a U-turn so I can get to California. But also there's an important rule that you cannot be a traveler inside your town, in your own town. In your own town, you cannot be a traveler. You won't be a traveler. For example, let's say you live on campus. You go to school, you live on campus outside of your town. And then you leave campus to come home. You leave on Friday to come home. And you get home on Friday and you're going to stay. So Saturday is going to be your first day. And then you're going to go back on Sunday. So it's less than 3 whole days. You're not even a traveler because you're in your hometown, just by virtue of being in your hometown. And I can add for you one more detail. If you live in the wilderness, so let's say you just have a cabin and there's no buildings around you in the first place, and you want to embark on a journey that's shortening distance, then you'll be a traveler as soon as you leave your house. طيب. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك